Excellent. All right. So I think folks are still trickling in, but I'll go ahead and get started here. Welcome again to everyone who's joining us today on your afternoon. We really appreciate your time. This is a regional water equity effort virtual event to feature on the topics of what we're exploring for this overall effort. My name is Elise Ruiz. I'm a group program manager with the Office of Sustainability and Environmental Justice. And this is a newly developed office within the Land Use and Environment group. Today, we're going to be going over stormwater reuse in affordable housing, which is a component of what we're exploring for the overall assessment. So today, I'd like to share with you how we're spending our time together. We're first going to go through a quick, brief introduction about what the Regional Water Equity effort is. Then we're going to have a special topic presentation on stormwater use in affordable housing presented by Stephanie Zim with Geosyntec. And then after that, we're going to have breakout rooms. This is where we'll have an opportunity to sit down with all of you, hear your feedback about the presentation, the overall topic of the Regional Water Equity effort. If you have any questions about that presentation or the effort at that time, I'll be happy to be a resource as well as Stephanie. So we ask that you hold your questions until that time. And we're just very excited and looking forward to speaking with you then. Then we're going to return back together just for a few more minutes for closing thoughts and for next steps. So first, to give you a little bit more background context about what Regional Water Equity effort is, this is a board-directed item. So back in September last year, 2022, the County Board of Supervisors directed staff to take a more proactive approach to address the drought crisis at the time. So overall, they wanted to find a holistic approach for drought management and water sustainability practices. And a lot of this has to align with the human right to water. And so we're exploring water equity in the equity lens through every component of this overall effort. That's very important for this approach. The other component about this effort is that it is a binational and imperial, I'm really not able to say my words today. I'm so sorry, everyone. Imperial County is also included in this overall assessment. So this is a collaborative effort is what I'm trying to say, and it's a very holistic approach. And so when we look at that approach, this is what the visual looks like. So overall, we're exploring the assessment, which will be explored more of the technical components within San Diego County, and more of that holistic approach is going to be here in Imperial County and border communities. So overall, there's going to be 3 buckets that we're going to assess for the regional assessment, which has now come into our hands, which is currently under review. And we're going to be going to public review later on in this year. And we'll get to that in a few moments. But for right now, I do want to go ahead and hand it over to Stephanie Zinn, who is a senior water resource planner with Geosyntec, who is a great support with this overall assessment, and they're actually authoring the report itself. So I'll go ahead and hand it over to Stephanie at this time.
Great, thank you, Elise. Can everyone see my screen okay?
Yep.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much. Thanks again, Elise. Really looking forward to supporting the regional water equity effort today and presenting on this topic. So the goal today is really to educate and have an open discussion about affordable housing and opportunities and constraints surrounding implementing stormwater and collection and use with affordable housing projects, as well as other development projects. So as we're aware, population is growing, and what we've identified throughout the state of California over the last several years is that there's a shortage in affordable housing. And there's a shortage also in San Diego and Imperial counties, which we've identified and is applicable to the scope of this overall effort. In the Sandag region alone, San Diego must accommodate over 170,000 new housing units within their zoning by 2029. And this is a requirement through the Regional Housing Needs Process, the RHNA process. That's a requirement of the state and the California Department of Housing and Community Needs. So when we're thinking about these new developments and supporting population and affordable housing and doing that in a sustainable way, stormwater collection and use opportunities kind of comes into play, and opportunities to implement those solutions with these new development projects. Affordable housing development projects have additional constraints and challenges surrounding them. They're often supported by measures that is supporting the funding or publicly funded. And due to this condition, they're usually on tighter timeframes for these housing developments to be open and operable. And there's usually limited funding as well surrounding those. So when you're thinking from a developer's perspective and you're on a tight timeline with limited funding, opportunities to implement sustainable features, including gray water reuse or stormwater collection, is a little more tricky. And here's an example of the Safe Landing project in County of LA, where you can see this was funded by Measure W, LA County's tax-based program to generate funds for homeless shelter and short-term housing, which is super successful. But I identified with some help from colleagues, I think on the phone today, about some of those limitations and those tight schedules that really makes it difficult to implement those sustainability features. And then there's additional challenges associated with affordable housing and other developments right now, land and labor costs, additional regulatory hurdles, which I'll talk a little bit more about. There may be community opposition to some of these affordable housing. So different considerations specific to this topic. And there are funding available for sustainability features with affordable housing projects, but what we've identified is that the credits and the funding specifically for like water reuse and stormwater collection don't fully cover the capital costs or the long-term operation and maintenance of those technologies. And so thinking from a developer perspective, there's really a lack of incentive currently to implement these solutions, especially with affordable housing projects on those tight schedules and limited funding. So now I want to talk a little bit about this stormwater component. And, I was talking about sustainability on that previous slide and opportunities to capture more stormwater and use it for things like irrigation or toilet flushing to offset potable water demands in San Diego. And so what stormwater is rain, right? Falls, and then it'll pick up the pollutants on our roadways, our other developments, oil and grease. It'll get into our rivers and streams and ultimately into our oceans and cause pollution there, which we really don't want. So there's actually been local stormwater permits around for several years that require developers and development projects to consider and treat the first flush of stormwater. So that's like when the storm first starts, that's picking up all of the pollutants on the surfaces, and that's the dirtiest type of stormwater in that first flush of rain. So when we're developing these projects, we have to consider that and implement solutions to either infiltrate that water into the ground to help with pollutants not getting into our oceans. Another option is to collect and use that water for irrigation or toilet flushing. And then another option is to send it through like a media filter and plants to remove some of those pollutants and then send it back out to our storm drains and oceans in a cleaner way. So the option that we're talking about today is the collection and use of stormwater. And throughout Southern California, it's typically shown that this option for developers to consider, and comply with the stormwater permits is actually really challenging, and it's usually proven to be infeasible from a regulatory perspective. And we can talk a little bit more about that after in the discussion on why that is. In addition, compared to infiltration or treating and releasing it, there's a much higher cost associated with implementing collection and use. And I'm just hearing someone, thank you there. Great. Okay. So regulatory challenges and overall costs, higher cost with this solution, and maybe reasons why it hasn't been as highly implemented throughout Southern California. But I do want to nod my head to the efforts of the county and the work that they're doing now. So as part of the regional water equity effort, they're actually assessing opportunities where stormwater collection and use may make a lot of sense within county facilities or along the roadways to capture that water and either divert it to existing water recycling plants for reuse or to capture it and use it on site to like irrigate a park. So it's a great effort that we're currently working on concurrently. And that's building off of the excellent study that was done in 2018 throughout the county called the Stormwater Capture and Feasibility Study, which highlights some of these opportunities and constraints surrounding stormwater capture and use throughout the county. So if you're interested, please refer to the study and please stay involved with the Regional Water Equity Report to see what we come up with. But to get into some of the considerations and drivers for stormwater collection and use, and I'll go through these from the left to the right. So like I mentioned, there's an inherent water quality benefit. If these development projects are capturing the water and holding it on site, treating it and reusing it for toilet flushing or irrigation, that's going to be a water quality benefit to our receiving waters and oceans downstream. And since we're maybe reducing our demands on potable water, that's also a water supply benefit. So multi-benefit type solutions. But with that come upfront costs, like I mentioned, that are much higher, and that needs to be balanced with the long-term savings. So that's something a developer is going to consider. Similarly, so since these systems have been less feasible throughout Southern California, municipalities aren't as familiar with permitting, reviewing, permitting, approving these systems. So that might have timing impacts, which may make it more difficult, especially for affordable housing, to implement these solutions. And with both of these, I just wanted to note that the end use of stormwater is also really important. You'll see in a couple slides down that you can capture stormwater and use it for subsurface irrigation pretty easily, and in a more straightforward way. But if you're capturing that water and you want to spray irrigate or you want to flush toilets with it, you're going to have a lot more robust treatment with it, which is another capital cost and another consideration that to have. So moving on, regulatory compliance benefit. Like I said, definitely more difficult to get that, to make that feasible. But what we're hearing from our regulators is that they're starting to understand that first item, that it's a water quality benefit as well as a local water supply benefit. So we may see the regulations change to make these solutions more feasible in the future. And then finally, there's other societal considerations when you're thinking about implementing a stormwater capture and use system within your development project. If you're educating the people who come to your businesses or to affordable housing projects, you can educate them with signage that, hey, we're doing something above and beyond and sustainable. And I know the future generations are definitely, that's something that they're going to be caring about. And what we learned 2 weeks ago during the Greywater presentation, if anyone was there for that, there was some great commentary about how greywater reuse and stormwater collection and use create green jobs. So when you're implementing a cistern or a tank in the ground and you're doing a dual plumbing and you have a treatment system, those are green jobs for our area and our workforce, which is another kind of indirect but important benefit to consider. So now we'll talk about some scales and get into some case studies of stormwater collection. So on the left, we have smaller scale rain barrels above ground systems that you could retrofit your home. Or if you see here in Whole Foods Market and a couple other areas, we've seen this where they want to show, hey, we're collecting this water and we're reusing it. This is a sustainability feature. Those are some examples. And then on the right, we have this larger scale stormwater collection and use. And this is the level that you would need to hit that regulatory requirement with the local stormwater permits. At the top, we see Bolivar Park Stormwater Capture Project, which is in City of Lakewood. This is a combined infiltration and use system where they're collecting some of the stormwater and using it for irrigation. And then on the bottom, if we have any football fans out there, this is the SoFi Stadium stormwater collection system where they use this for a regulatory requirement, and they also are blending it with reclaimed water. A lot of challenges with this design. So if you're interested to hear more about that, we can talk about it during the discussion. But those are some of the different scales of stormwater collection that we'll talk about today. And one of these is actually a really cool case study that a previous colleague shared with me on a project in the city of Huntington Beach in Orange County, where the homeowner wanted to retrofit their home with a pretty large scale, if you could see the pictures, above ground storage system, and route that storage of rainwater to a subsurface irrigation system. They were able to obtain rebates that were available from the city, and I think the overall cost was anywhere between like $4,000 to $5,000 to implement the system. So not insignificant, but I do believe rebates did assist with covering some of that cost. And I did want to note that the County of San Diego also has similar rebates available if you were interested in implementing a solution like this within San Diego County, as well as some of the municipalities and cities within the county. And so really, really neat opportunity to capture and maybe offset the amount of irrigation that your lawn or other landscaping might have, and might reduce your water bill too. Here's another great case study. So County of LA overall has really prioritized making stormwater collection and use something that's more feasible in terms of that regulatory compliance for new developments to implement this solution with various projects. So this is a project in Reseda, Van Owen, a residential project where they propose these 700-gallon cisterns underground within each one of those lots. And the price on this was actually pretty surprising. I think it was about $3,000 per lot. But when you think about other types of treatment and compliance options for stormwater, this is actually really affordable. So there's a difference between retrofitting your home and having a developer think about this and implement this in the beginning during design. And so this system is just really great. The civil engineering and stormwater design was done by Fusco Engineering. So really cool project. And maybe this is what the future is going to look like for other areas in Southern California to make this more feasible. And so those two projects that I mentioned aren't affordable housing projects. And what we've learned throughout our research is that implementing those solutions in California there's a lot less, specifically with affordable housing. What we did learn is that there are stormwater collection and use examples in the middle of the country and on the East Coast. And there are two examples here. This is in New York, there's a stormwater and collection and use for an affordable housing project that has a green roof. Green roofs aren't really implemented in Southern California, but great opportunity here. Similarly, affordable housing project in Minneapolis implemented stormwater collection and use for irrigation of a community garden. So definitely possible, just not happening as frequently in California. If you're interested in hearing or seeing more about example projects, they list this resource here, the National Wildlife Federation Texas Coast and Water Program has a great document with examples of both gray water and stormwater collection and use that you could reference if you're interested. So a lot of information, really looking forward to going over some of this and answering any questions that you have. But just to close, there are really a lot of constraints right now with implementing stormwater collection and use systems, not only with affordable housing, but with all developments throughout Southern California, despite some of these local water supply benefits that they may have. And affordable housing projects really have additional challenges, timing, funding limitations towards implementing both stormwater collection and gray water reuse solutions. There are some funding opportunities available, but they might not be enough to really move the needle to getting developers to really be incentivized to implement these solutions in a timely manner. And there's additional incentives that we can talk about. If there would be a standard reuse technology kind of off the shelf that could be implemented that would help with the timing constraints. Additional credits offered through some of these funding opportunities. Something that we learned about more recently is a density bonus. So could you have more units with a development project only if you're implementing some of these stormwater collection and reuse solutions with those development projects to kind of balance out the cost a little better. Waived permitting fees and entity, we know operation and maintenance of these systems is not insignificant. So maybe a way to do that in a more efficient manner. Many ideas to support implementing this solution more broadly, but definitely something to discuss and walk through, and looking forward to doing that with you shortly. So with that, Elise, I will turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Stephanie. That was really great and very informative. And I really appreciate, and I'm sure the entire group appreciates those case studies as well. Those were fascinating. So there's a lot more to learn. I do want to welcome some folks who may have joined us through the presentation. And just to check in with you all, we are going to be going out into breakout rooms here in a moment to discuss what Stephanie just went over, and also to discuss the regional water equity effort in general. But I do want to offer that if anyone does need Spanish translation, we do have a translator available for interpretation. So please let me know if you are interested in that, and we'll get you set up. Thank you so much. So now we're going to go ahead and start getting ready for our breakout room session. Now,